it's Angel. Today we're going to be making a beef and tomato stir fry, which is really similar to an eggs and tomato side dish that my grandma used to make, but we're using beef instead, which will make this a really hearty entree. So if you guys like fresh tomatoes or you're growing fresh tomatoes in your garden this year, this is the video for you. So let's get started, shall we? For this recipe, I'm starting with 1 pound of beef skirt steak. You can also use a pound of flank steak as well, but I like the skirt steak because it's a little bit more fatty. Next, I've got a couple fresh tomatoes. I recommend 2 medium-sized tomatoes along with maybe a handful of small tomatoes. We will also need a 1/4 shallot, 1 to 2 cloves of garlic, 1 teaspoon of minced ginger, 1 to 2 stalks of green onions, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a dash or 2 of white ground pepper, a drizzle of sesame oil to taste, 2 tablespoons of light soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of cane sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce, some oil for cooking and marinating, and finally some rice wine, and I'm using about 1 tablespoon of rice wine. First, let's prepare our marinade for the beef. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put the beef on the cutting board. Then we're gonna go ahead and cut the beef into thin slices. Maybe about 1/2 inch like this. And we're cutting against the grain. And if you guys feel like splurging, you can also use a different type of beef cut. You can use New York strip steak or ribeye. All those cuts of beef are good as well. And now I'm just going to transfer everything to a bowl. Give my hands a quick wash. Now we're going to marinate our beef. I am going to start with the rice wine. 1 tablespoon of rice wine. It doesn't have to be exact, you can go more. And if you guys don't have rice wine, that's totally okay. You can always omit the rice wine and substitute with water instead. Next, we're gonna add a little bit of oil. I'm using about a teaspoon. Next, about a tablespoon of cornstarch. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. And finally, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'll just eyeball it with 2 pinches here. Now I'm just gonna dig in and marinate everything with my hands. And we're done. So we want to let that sit and marinate for an hour, or you can do this overnight in the fridge. And don't forget to wash your hands. Soap and water. I read the comments, guys, and I know you guys call me out when I don't wash my hands with soap and water, so this is for you. Now we're going to prepare the vegetables while my beef is marinating. I'm going to start with the green onions. I'm going to slice a couple smaller slices at an angle. This is for garnish. And the rest will be for the dish itself. And because these are big, I'm just going to slice them into halves. Now we're going to use about a 1/4 of a shallot. If you don't have shallots, you can always use some yellow onion instead. Just going to go ahead and mince that up. Perfect. Next, we'll need some garlic and ginger. And pro tip of the day, and because I'm a little bit lazy, we're gonna be using pre-minced and tree-chopped garlic and ginger here. So if you guys don't have these at home, you should always have some in your fridge. They make great, easy to grab, easy to use substitutes for chopping fresh garlic and ginger yourself. So if you have your ginger and garlic and you want to cut up fresh ones yourself, that's when you would do that. Otherwise, just take a teaspoon of ginger and garlic and put that into a small bowl. And I like a little extra garlic, so I'm just gonna do an extra spoonful. Set that aside, and now we'll prepare our sliced tomatoes. So I already went ahead and Gave the tomatoes a good wash and rub. And for these, I'm just gonna cut these into about quarters. Actually, we'll cut them into eighths. Now here I have these smaller tomatoes, and the reason why I got a variety pack of different colored tomatoes is so it adds a nice pop of color to the dish. So for these smaller tomatoes, I'm just going to slice them into halves. These yellow ones are really nice and pretty. Then transfer those over to the dish. Now I'm just gonna finish making the sauce for the dish. So I have my ginger and garlic here. Then I'm going to add some sugar. We'll want a teaspoon of sugar here. A pinch of salt. A dash of white ground pepper. A drizzle of sesame oil. Oh, come on. You need to work out more. Okay. And then the soy sauce and our oyster sauce. Just give that a good mix. Make sure everything's dissolved. And next we're going to make our sauce thickener. So I've got 2 tablespoons of water in here. You can go ahead and eyeball it. And then we're gonna add some cornstarch. 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. And give that a good stir. And just make sure you're using room temperature or cold water here, guys. Otherwise, your thickener will thicken up prematurely. Okay, now we're ready to cook. I'm gonna do medium-high heat here. I'm gonna turn the fan on. Once that's come to about medium-high heat and it's preheated, I'm just gonna add a little bit of oil. Now we're gonna add our beef. Now what we wanna do is put the beef in a single layer if you can, and let that sear for a little bit before stir frying. That's a really nice brown right there. We're going to be cooking this until it's about 70% done, and then we'll take it off and put that back into the bowl. Looks like it's about 70% done, so let's go ahead and put this back into the bowl. And don't worry guys, we're going to be cooking this later. Now I'm turning the pan down to about a medium-low heat. We're gonna add a little bit more oil. Next, we're gonna add our tomatoes, shallots, and green onions. We'll just wanna get the tomatoes a nice sear and let them soften. Super smoky in here. Okay, so now the tomatoes are nice and soft and brown. Now what we want to do is we're going to combine the meat and then add the sauce. Now I'm going to add the sauce, mix that in, and then we're going to add our thickener. Finally, we're going to add our sauce thickener. Just remember to mix the cornstarch into the water, give that a good stir again before you put it into the pan. And once you do, start mixing because this will go quickly. Okay? And once the sauce is thickened, we'll go ahead and turn off the heat and we're ready to serve. I like to have this with some short grain white rice, which I've cooked earlier. I have a bowl here and I'm just gonna scoop some beef, tomatoes, and some sauce. Let's go for 2 big scoops here. Finally, I like to garnish with some green onions on top. All right, now ready for the taste test. I am going to get a nice piece of beef here, maybe a little onion as well. I love the flavors of the beef, and the tomatoes are just really fresh and yet tart. Super delicious, and I love the flavors of the oyster sauce as well. I actually just want to get some rice with this because that's what makes it good. A little rice in the beef too. That was super delicious and really quick and easy to make. I highly recommend, especially if you guys like beef and fresh tomatoes. I'm Angel, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's beef and tomatoes recipe, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And as my grandpa would say, sharing a meal with a fascinating stranger is one of life's true delights. So until we can share some beef and tomatoes together, take care, I love you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!